There's going to be the atmosphere before a game. I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of a week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Let's go. Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship.
The golf has been mesmerizing.
They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes! Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Great to be back with you as we get ready for the upcoming weekend ahead. We've got a big college football game tonight. Of course, we have great games this weekend in the National Football League. We'll be joined by our guest contributors here on the show today from Legal Sports Report. And, of course, Vinnie Iyer will join us from Sporting News. In addition, Manny Navarro from The Athletic will preview the Miami Hurricanes' upcoming game against Ball State and talk about what the Hurricanes have accomplished thus far. And with the focus on football, the focus was in South Florida last night, but unfortunately, once again, for all the wrong reasons, 2 weeks in a row. Last week, it was Tyreek Hill before the game being detained. Last night, a key injury yet again to quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, who left the game last night with yet another concussion. Unfortunately for the Dolphins, this looks like it could potentially cost Tua time. And who knows even what the future potentially could hold for him as he ran into the chest. His helmet hit the chest of defensive back, ironically, Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills. And so for the time being, the loss of the Dolphins last night to the Bills is sort of the secondary story. The primary story is the future of Tua. And this morning, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, talked about how the team moves forward.
I think the way to the best articulate where we're at is, the team and the organization are very confident in Skylar and see, there was a reason he was our backup quarterback. That being said, we will bring in someone. We're just evaluating the pros and cons for the different situations and getting through all those possibilities to do the best thing for the team. But as it stands today, I'm expecting that Skylar is the next man up.
And as of right now, it looks like Skylar Thompson could potentially start in a little bit under 2 weeks when Miami travels to Seattle. There are still a couple of free agent quarterbacks that are out there on the waiver wire. One that has been mentioned, at least rumor-wise, has been former Dolphins quarterback Ryan Tannehill. We'll see if the Dolphins go that route. But needless to say, regardless if Tua finished the game or not, the Dolphins just laid an egg at home against the Buffalo Bills last night. Final score, 31-10 in the game, goes under the total. Bills covered easily. The Dolphins defense couldn't stop the Bills, and their offensive line couldn't protect for Tua, Skylar Thompson, or anyone there. Devon Achane had a good game last night. James Cook had 3 touchdowns, as you see there in the game last night. Buffalo, of course, now improves to 2-0, and the Dolphins story far from over. We'll get an update on them, I'm sure, early next week. All right, let's get to some sports betting news. Massachusetts is investigating golf betting emails sent by DraftKings. It was a blast. The MGC, that's the Massachusetts Gaming Commission, fresh off a meeting that explored sports bettor limiting, met again on Thursday to deal with several other matters, including an email blast that was sent out on August 13th about golf wagers that many people didn't even make. They sent the email to more than 1 million residents or registered users when it was supposed to go to only 13. Big mistake made. They're looking into it, and we'll see if there are any ramifications from this email that was falsely sent. Meanwhile, ESPN last night reported a story that is shaking up minor league baseball in a very big way. There's a player that was on the Minnesota Twins that was just drafted this past year, a 6th-round pick, who was allegedly tipping pitches to batters at the plate while he was the catcher. I mean, this is an insane story. Derek Bender was let go by the Minnesota Twins for doing it. It was a minor league playoff game. Certainly his future playing has to be in doubt. Fort Myers coaches were notified by Lakeland's coaches that Bender was tipping pitches after telling teammates he wanted the season to be over. Wow. Needless to say, bad decision there. Did you catch this game last night with South Alabama just absolutely pouring it on in college football? I mean, you very rarely see something like this, but a game was stopped last night, and essentially anybody who bet on the team to win did not win. If you bet the under, you got your money back. But I think this is one of the more rare occasions in college football of seeing an outcome like this. Final score last night, which was not really a final score, as you can see here, 87-10, but they shortened the fourth quarter because you need 55 minutes to get paid and be declared an actual game. That is a bad beat of all time. Fanatic Sportsbooks has launched in D.C., the 23rd jurisdiction to welcome the online operator. They debuted in Washington on Thursday, a new partnership with the Washington Spirit of the National Women's Soccer League as well. So congrats to all involved. Not congrats to Deshaun Watson. The beat goes on here. The woman is going to meet to discuss these allegations. There's an attorney representing a plaintiff in a civil lawsuit accusing Watson right now of sexual assault and battery. And Thursday, the woman will speak to the NFL within the next 2 weeks. That's what she said yesterday. But needless to say, Watson's future in the NFL once again in peril. NFLPA's executive director Lloyd Howell, who was visiting the Ravens on Thursday, said medical treatment on site should be provided as quickly as possible. This is referring to defensive player Kyle Van Noy, who said that he was not treated properly in Kansas City. Right now, in a statement released, the league criticized the NFLPA for citing unsupported conclusions. So the league and the PA are essentially at odds over this situation. Defensive end for the Cleveland Browns, Myles Garrett, he is expected to play on Sunday, so that's good news that he'll get him in the game. And Russell Wilson is getting closer to a return for the Pittsburgh Steelers, although right now it definitely appears that Justin Fields is going to make another start again for Pittsburgh this week. Tonight in college football, it's probably one of the bigger games of the week because you have two teams in the top 25 playing against each other. Kansas State takes on Arizona, and right now K-State sits at -7.5 with a total of 60.5 going into tonight's game. Connor Wegman is listed as questionable for Texas A&M ahead of the matchup against the Florida Gators. Gators could use two quarterbacks against A&M in Gainesville this weekend. Cam Rising, the player who feels like he's played for a decade at Utah, unlikely to play in Saturday's game against Utah State, according to the Action Network, but Utah should have no problem with them and should be able to win, although we've seen crazier things happen in college football as well. The University of Missouri Board of Curators have approved a $250 million renovation at Memorial Stadium on Thursday, so a new stadium, or at least renovations, headed to Missouri for a upcoming college football season. Seems like this will take a year or two to get done. All right, over to Major League Baseball. Big weekend, of course, for Shohei Ohtani as he's chasing 50-50. We're not going to see Corey Seager play again this season for the Texas Rangers. He's going to undergo surgery to repair a sports hernia, and so his all-star season is done. The Rangers hanging by a thread in the pursuit of the American League wild card. Meanwhile, Kumar Rocker, pretty impressive start yesterday. 4 innings pitched, 1 run, 7 strikeouts in his Major League debut. Also, Jacob deGrom, 2-time Cy Young Award winner, is going to be making his first start in over 503 days. He's back for the Texas Rangers. And the Yankees walked it off. Back-to-back walk-offs, first time since May of 2022. Juan Soto with a single. They're now up 2 games in the American League East because the Orioles did not play yesterday. Now, there's a banned soccer player. You may not have heard this story before, and his name is Son Jun-ho. And right now, authorities say that he was forced a match-fixing confession. Try to say that 3 times fast. So basically, he is saying that whether or not he fixed matches on the soccer pitch doesn't matter because his confession was forced. And that's how attorneys are going to try to get him out of this thing. We'll see. The Safe Bet Act has called for several initiatives that are putting each U.S. betting market under the same umbrella. Jim Gazzale will join us. We'll talk more about that coming up in about 30 minutes. And the WNBA and Aces have filed motions to dismiss former Las Vegas player Dearica Hamby's federal lawsuit about mistreatment over her pregnancy. We'll be right back with Vinnie Iyer of Sporting News next.
You say this is a smash, I'm going to run out and smash my button while you talk about Ramondre Stevenson.
I don't think the Bengals defense is one that you should be fearful of. I think they're middle of the pack. You know, they've lost the Bateses and some of those guys over the years that you used to fear. They got a lot of young kids in there who have some talent. But at the same time here, I do expect Ramondre to be a guy that is going to revert back to what he did a couple years ago.
Fantasy sports today, only on SportsGrid.
He had 4 grabs in the first half for just over 30 yards, was injured, came back in briefly, and then had to be carted off.
We were pessimistic on Puka Nakua's injury to the same right knee, of that being a nothing, just a bursa, and that's it, as per Sean McVay. We felt there could be a small PCL component.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Everyone had him rookie of the year, offensive player of the year. Bears are going to the Super Bowl. Eberflus coach of the year. He was terrible.
If he's going to be a success, he's got to play within structure as much as possible. I get it. If the pocket breaks down, throw off the platform. That's fine. But within structure, when the play is there to be made, you need to make it, and he didn't do that.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
147 yards against the Jets and a touchdown? I mean, the numbers are incredible.
It's the Shanahan connection, and that's just what it feels like. And, Jordan Mason came into that game with a career 5.6 yards per carry. He's always been a very tough runner. He's always been good when called upon in small doses. You mentioned the yardage, which was impressive, but 28 carries. That's what I'm looking at.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Vinnie Iyer is with us. We're going to get right into it because we got a lot to cover. Vinnie, before we get to this week's games, I mean, the hot button topic right now, of course, is the Dolphins losing to the Bills last night. And Mike McDaniel just met with the media and said that, we should not be talking about this possibility of, or even if it is a possibility, of their quarterback Tua retiring. For those who missed it, he had another concussion last night. Kudos to him. I thought it's a really well done press conference. But naturally, these are things that we have to talk about. I mean, Tua has a family. He has parents. He has to weigh all these different options. I would be guessing if making any prediction, but if I did, it would be that we're going to see him play again this season. I don't know if that's the right or wrong decision, and who are we to make that for somebody who's an athlete and a young athlete? But the whole situation is just terribly disappointing to see how it's playing out.
Yeah, I think we all just have to wait, and the protocol and everything will progress here, and then we'll see if he's in position to play. I think the biggest thing that everyone's concerned about is his well-being, to make sure that they just don't put him out there again and to repeat some of the mistakes they've made before with Mike McDaniel and maybe trying to play him in a situation where he shouldn't have been out there. I think they've maybe learned their lesson, hopefully, from a couple of years ago, where you want to err on the side of caution in these situations, especially when the concussion history is starting to build and have more such incidents, and you're having this scary fencing pose and things that have happened here with the last couple. So again, they'll be careful with it. It's going to be interesting to see. They have the long mini bye now, so we'll see where we're at as we get into the Seattle game in week 3.
Yeah, and the only thing I really don't get is that the NFL is allowing players to wear this new helmet this season, this Guardian helmet, and if anybody in the NFL should be wearing it, again, my opinion only, I mean, it is this player. So to me, I know that was asked to McDaniel at the press conference today, but bizarre to think that you have this option for a player that's been hurt more by this than anyone else in the NFL. I don't know. I think that's a fair question to ask the Dolphins and to move forward with that in the future. Okay, so let's move on to the games this weekend. Not the tastiest one, by the way. Seattle at New England. New England pulls off the big upset in week 1, knocks out a lot of people from survivor pools. Maybe 20, 30, 40% of the people who entered used the Bengals. Do they have another one in them, Vinny, this week against the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, this is a matchup of 1-0 teams. That means, barring a tie, one of these teams are going to be 2-0 going into week 3. So I look at the Seahawks. I mean, they're favored in this one. I think the Patriots will have a game plan here to try to contain Geno Smith. So I think it's going to be a close one. That you do have that hook there with the 3.5. So I think the Patriots at home, it's hard to go cross country. And I know Pete Carroll's teams were good at doing that in Seattle, but we're not sure about Mike Donald's teams, right? What do we get here? So when we go forward, I think Seattle is good, but are they that good? I mean, they were at home against the Broncos last week. They have to go all the way across. So I'd say it's pretty close. I think it's about a field goal game right there. And I think these defenses will show up. 2 defensive-minded rookie coaches. So you'll see a little bit containment here of not only Geno Smith, but Jacoby Brissett on the other side.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, what's interesting is FanDuel has really adjusted the worst record in the league. Now, the New England is still the favorite to have the worst record, but they were virtually even money or even minus money in some spots. But now, after one win, Vinny, what we've seen from Carolina is they have moved up on this board, plus 750. Patriots are still plus money, plus 270. I'm kind of thinking, Vinny, I don't know. You tell me. This was the preseason. Look at how this has shifted now. The Panthers are now the favorite at plus 250. New England has moved back to plus 950. Those are the current odds. What do you make of it?
Yeah, when you look at it, you look at the Giants, and that's a team I would circle right there. I mean, talk about teams that looked awful in week 1, and they might be headed to a quarterback change soon here. If they lose the Commanders, you're not going to be really high on the Giants the rest of the way. And by the way, a big game exported to Germany is going to be Giants-Panthers. So maybe that'll be the decider on who has the fewest wins in the NFL. So wait for that Munich game to come. But when you look at it, I don't know if it's going to be the Patriots anymore. I mean, who knows with this Dolphins situation? Who knows how good the Jets are? Maybe there's some wins in the division that are available that we didn't see before. So, yeah, I think you have to throw everything out the window with the Patriots after they won as 9.5-point underdogs last week.
Yeah, I got to tell you, if you're going to bet the Patriots, do it immediately, because I don't think they're going to win 6 games. This is the time. Plus 950, if you still believe that is the case. All right, Cowboys this week, minus 6.5 against the Saints. Dallas goes to Cleveland, blows them out. New Orleans blows out Carolina. Oof, tough game to call here. I'm kind of leaning toward points again here. I mean, can't New Orleans keep this close with Dallas?
Yeah, Dallas has a few injury concerns on defense with no Deron Bland, and we saw New Orleans. They came out really looking good. They had big plays from Rashid Shaheed. They didn't even get Chris Olave going, but they had their tight ends working. The running game was looking good. So good diversity on that Saints offense to kind of keep it interesting. That said, the Cowboys are a different type of team at home overall. Offensively, Dak is much better. The defense usually comes through better at home as well. So the Cowboys seem to have just been crushing it at home as favorites consistently. That's been the thing they've done the last couple of years. So when I look at it, I think they take care of business, and I do like the points going above the total, but I also like the Cowboys taking care of business because that's kind of been their thing the past few years, is that when they're at home, everyone goes gangbusters.
All right, finally, Rams and Cardinals, really tight game over on FanDuel. Rams minus 1.5 on the road at Arizona. Plus 1.5, at Arizona. I mean, neither team wants to get off to an 0-2 start. I guess the good news, Vinny, is that's not going to happen for one of these two teams.
Yeah, I do actually like the Cardinals to take care of things here at home. I mean, I think you'll see their offense explode here. The Rams defense didn't really inspire much in Detroit. The Cardinals defense wasn't good either, but I think not having Puka Nacua for the Rams, that's a little bit of a loss. Where the Cardinals, I think you'll see their young weapons, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, really help Kyler Murray at home this week.
All right. You think Vinny complaining, Marvin Harrison, not going to get him the ball this week? You know what's going to happen this week.
Yeah.
Big week coming for him. All right, Vinny, great stuff. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Craig.
All right, we'll be back. Dr. Chow weighs in on key injuries in the NFL. McCaffrey, Nacua, and Higgins. Next.
You say this is a smash. I'm going to run out and smash my button while you talk about Ramondre Stevenson.
I don't think the Bengals defense is one that you should be fearful of. I think they're middle of the pack. You know, they've lost the Bateses and some of those guys over the years that you used to fear. They got a lot of young kids in there who have some talent. But at the same time here, I do expect Ramondre to be a guy that is going to revert back to what he did a couple years ago.
Fantasy sports today, only on SportsGrid.
He had 4 grabs in the first half for just over 30 yards, was injured, came back in briefly, and then had to be carted off.
We were pessimistic on Puka Nacua's injury to the same right knee, of that being a nothing, just a bursa, and that's it, as per Sean McVay. We felt there could be a small PCL component.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Everyone had him rookie of the year, offensive player of the year. Bears are going to the Super Bowl. Eberflus coach of the year. He was terrible.
If he's going to be success, he's got to play within structure as much as possible. I get it. If the pocket breaks down, throw off the platform. That's fine. But within structure, when the play is there to be made, you need to make it, and he didn't do that.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
147 yards against the Jets and a touchdown? I mean, the numbers are incredible.
It's the Shanahan connection, and that's just what it feels like. And, Jordan Mason came into that game with a career 5.6 yards per carry. He's always been a very tough runner. He's always been good when called upon in small doses. You mentioned the yardage, which was impressive, but 28 carries. That's what I'm looking at.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Big injuries in the National Football League this week, as there are every week. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, let's begin. We got Dr. Chow in the house to weigh in on 3 different players this week. In fact, it looks like all 3 of the players that we're going to discuss are unlikely to play this week. One already on injured reserve, another one who is doubtful for the week, and then another who's questionable. And we'll dive into that first. Of course, everybody talking Monday night about the fact that Christian McCaffrey did not play in the game, that Jordan Mason got his opportunity and made the most of it. What is his status for the week? Let's check in with Dr. Chow on the San Francisco 49ers.
Christian McCaffrey was a surprise inactive for week 1. What is his injury and when might he return? He had a calf muscle strain from the preseason, but leading up to week 1 had calf and then Achilles. Achilles tendonitis is different than a calf muscle injury. Calf muscle injury can linger and get worse. Achilles tendonitis can linger, but there is potential risk for Achilles tendon rupture. This is why the 49ers will be very careful with CMC. He's likely to miss week 2, maybe beyond. They have a good backup. They're trying to be Super Bowl or bust here. I see them being very careful with Christian McCaffrey because of even the slight chance of Achilles tendon rupture. You gotta be sure. But he will return this season and be 100%. The question is when, but it isn't going to be week 2 or any time in the very near future.
And McCaffrey's, how much he's worth to the point spread has certainly not changed all that much. As the 49ers used Mason, he looked really good. And as Dr. Chow said, I would guess later today we'll probably get clarification, but it does seem unlikely that we'll see McCaffrey again, at least this week. Now, we already have definitive knowledge on Puka Nacua, who was injured in the preseason, didn't play a lot, tried to play through it in week 1, didn't go all that well against that game against the Detroit Lions. The Rams decided to place Nacua on injured reserve. Here's an update on the Rams wide receiver.
Puka Nacua to IR with a PCL sprain, and that's no surprise to us at Sports Injury Central. In the preseason, when Sean McVay said it was just a bursa, we saw good practice video where we worried for a PCL sprain that we thought could leak into the regular season. Sure enough, first game, first quarter, innocuous injury, aggravation of the PCL, and now an injured reserve. The good news is no surgery. The good news, this isn't just a brand new PCL. It's been a few weeks, so earlier healing time. We expect Nacua to return mid-season and return to form, but certainly this impacts the Rams and their season. Unfortunately, it does turn out to be a PCL sprain instead of a simple bursa.
It's interesting because the Rams last season were without Cooper Kupp for a long period of time, and Puka Nacua was the guy. Now they could be without Nacua. I'm not sure. Maybe this is a little bit of overreaction if Kupp is 100% healthy. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati Bengals had their hands full last week going into a game, not knowing if Jamar Chase was going to play. Friday last week, we found out T. Higgins wasn't going to play. Here we are again Friday. Is there a chance that Higgins misses another game for the Bengals this week? Here's Dr.
T. Higgins didn't play week 1 for the Bengals. When might he return? Bengals were upset by the Patriots. Jamar Chase barely back, fewer reps. T. Higgins out. T. Higgins is likely to miss significantly more time. There's no video. Hamstrings are hard to judge, but this happened in practice on Thursday. There was no way he was playing 3-4 days later, and it would be a stretch to say that he's playing for week 2 in 10 days or so from the injury. As such, the hope is that he stays off of IR and can return in week 3, 4, or sometime soon, but do not expect T. Higgins for the Bengals again this week in week 2. This is Dr. David Chow at Sports Injury Central.
All right, we'll check back with David Chow next Friday here on the show to get the latest on the injuries in the National Football League. Meanwhile, we have one update on an injury. Hollywood Brown of the Kansas City Chiefs, who missed week 1, it has been announced he is being placed on injured reserve. So not only not going to be back this week, but also will miss at least 2 more weeks, as the Kansas City Chiefs are very fortunate. They drafted Xavier Worthy and added Juju Smith-Schuster and some other players to fill in, at least for the time being. All right, we will take a quick time out here on NewsWire. Coming up next, Jim Gazzale joins us from Legal Sports Report. If you're winning money betting on sports and ignoring the IRS, you may want to stay tuned. This next segment is for you. We'll be right back.
You say this is a smash. I'm going to run out and smash my button while you talk about Ramondre Stevenson.
I don't think the Bengals defense is one that you should be fearful of. I think they're middle of the pack. You know, they've lost the Bateses and some of those guys over the years that you used to fear. They got a lot of young kids in there who have some talent. But at the same time here, I do expect Ramondre to be a guy that is going to revert back to what he did a couple years ago.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
He had 4 grabs in the first half for just over 30 yards, was injured, came back in briefly, and then had to be carted off.
We were pessimistic on Puka Nakua's injury to the same right knee, of that being a nothing, just a bursa, and that's it, as per Sean McVay. We felt there could be a small PCL component.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Everyone had him rookie of the year, offensive player of the year. Bears are going to the Super Bowl. Eberflus coach of the year. He was terrible.
If he's going to be success, he's got to play within structure as much as possible. I get it. If the pocket breaks down, throw off the platform. That's fine. But within structure, when the play's there to be made, you need to make it, and he didn't do that.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
147 yards against the Jets and a touchdown? Man, the numbers are incredible.
It's the Shanahan connection, and that's just what it feels like. And, Jordan Mason came into that game with a career 5.6 yards per carry. He's always been a very tough runner. He's always been good when called upon in small doses. You mentioned the yardage, which was impressive, but 28 carries. That's what I'm looking at.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Jim Gazzale is with us. He's our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report as we dive into an update on horse racing a little bit with DraftKings, also the IRS with an early warning for sports bettors before the football season. Don't see that often. Jim, great to have you back here on NewsWire.
Thanks for having me, Craig. I couldn't let you get away with an extra week or two without a horse racing story.
I got you. Loud and clear. We'll dive into that. But first, let's get into this new Safe Bet Act and tell us a little bit more about it. I see AI is being brought up into this as well. So how is artificial intelligence getting involved in sports betting to where they have to put out an act to keep safe with it? Don't get it. Tell me.
Yeah, so yesterday, Congressman Paul Tonko and Senator Richard Blumenthal unveiled their Safe Bet Act. This is their formal introduction of this piece of legislation that they've been talking about for the last handful of months, and it aims to regulate bits and pieces of the sports betting industry at the federal level, including AI, like you said, Craig. A couple of interesting notes that stuck out to me from their press conference yesterday. One of the big ones being that this piece of legislation calls for an outright ban on all college player props, which we've seen a handful of states around the country already taking action to regulate college wagering, especially around those college player props. In addition to that, they focused on 3 areas where they want to see increased regulation, one being advertising, another affordability, and the third AI. So the ads on that advertising piece, they want to limit where sportsbooks can promote their products. They want to make sure that ads are restricted to times and places where children most likely wouldn't be in the audience. They want to also regulate advertisements so that it's strictly about brand awareness rather than enticing people to place bets or educating people on how to place bets. The affordability aspect of this legislation was also interesting. They want to put in place a handful of different deposit limits. They're calling for no more than 5 deposits into your sports betting app in a 24-hour period. You can't deposit more than $1,000 in 24 hours, and you can't deposit more than $10,000 over any 30-day period. Now, on the AI piece, as we know, Craig, sportsbooks are using that artificial intelligence, that machine learning, all of these data points to custom tailor those same game parlays, different advertising, promotional boosts, all sorts of things to entice us to place a wager. So Tonko and Blumenthal, they both want to see regulation around the use of AI to better protect players. They say that unfairly targets losing players to have them chase their losses, so on and so forth. So they want some regulation around that. Their legislation that they unveiled yesterday was met with some pretty stern opposition. Congresswoman Titus from Nevada, she represents the district that includes the Las Vegas Strip. She spoke out against the legislation, as well as the American Gaming Association. They spoke out against this legislation as well. We've seen in recent years some attempts to regulate sports betting at the federal level be unsuccessful. So it remains to be seen what the uptake of this Safe Bet Act will be, but they did formally introduce it yesterday in D.C., Craig.
All right. So, look, I mean, I think any protection is good protection at this point, and hopefully some will abide by it. But naturally speaking, not everybody does. Hopefully this is one of those bills that goes through that people can pay more attention to. Speaking of paying attention, anytime the IRS is hitting anybody up for sports betting, it's usually a good thing. I mean, Jim, it means you won. So, I mean, that being said, people are all worried about getting hit by the IRS. I mean, you made money if that's the case. But how about this? Before the upcoming football season, the IRS saying, hey, look out here, folks. If you don't claim your winnings, you may find a letter from us at the end of the year.
Yeah, they did put out a reminder just on the eve of the NFL season kicking off last week. They did put out a reminder to say that your sports betting winnings and all gambling winnings are considered income and taxable at the federal level. It's the same thing for states as well. The main message, though, that they're trying to get across now with the widespread adoption of sports betting across the U.S. is that they want you to be playing safely and legally. They reminded us, too, that the illegal sports betting market is still quite large. They estimate it to be about $700 million. So they want you, the customer, the American sports bettor, to be playing on legal, regulated sites, regulated apps, and reminding you, too, that any winnings that you do have are taxable. They did also tout their efforts, the IRS did, in cracking down on some illegal sports betting schemes and recent cases, the big one being the Ippei Mizuhara case, Shohei Ohtani's interpreter getting caught up in an illegal gambling operation. So they did tout their investigative work and their success in that regard. But ultimately, the message was play safely and legally this NFL season and, of course, throughout the year.
Now, finally, there's an article up right now from Jim over on LegalSportsReport.com for those of you who are horse racing enthusiasts, and especially those of you who play the ponies and also play it over on DraftKings. What is the latest on this shared wallet? I know that you have brought it up before. We probably should explain people what that could potentially mean for people who are betting on horse racing and especially doing it on DraftKings. They may not be used to that.
Yeah, for sure, Craig. And what the shared wallet is, it allows you to deposit once and use the same funds across all three of the main verticals that the sports books obviously where it's legal, that they offer. So sports betting, horse racing, and online casino. DraftKings has been working on that shared wallet technology for over a year now, based on my conversations with DraftKings executives over the last several weeks and months, and they plan to roll that out in the first half of next year. Spring to early summer, I was told that shared wallet will be rolled out across the DraftKings properties. FanDuel is the only online sportsbook to offer that shared wallet right now across its sports betting and horse racing platforms. And we've seen just how successful that extra bit of technology has been for FanDuel. They touted record number of dollars bet through the Triple Crown with the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont. Legal sports betting in Kentucky certainly helped elevate and boost those handle figures that we saw with the Kentucky Derby. So DraftKings now is planning to roll that out in the first 6 months of next year. DraftKings did tell me that they were the most popular app, the most downloaded app on Kentucky Derby Day. They made a heavy investment with the New York Racing Association to sponsor a couple of races up here this past summer, which they told me provided a big boost in handle. They didn't give me any exact dollar amounts, but they did say that promotional effort, that marketing effort did pay dividends for them. So they're expecting this shared wallet, that ease of use, deposit once, and have that ability to use the same funds across all of the different verticals. They do expect that to be a big boost in business and in handle across those platforms for them. And we'll see that, in the next 6 or 9 months.
Yeah, ease of use, definitely something people can get used to. All right, well, great to see you, Jim. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the college and pro football and the horse racing. We'll see you back here next week. Thanks again.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, one of the big surprises in college football early on has been the University of Miami Hurricanes football team. They go to Gainesville and take care of business, win very easily last week. They're big favorites this week, but the question is, can the University of Miami jump into the fray in terms of the college football playoff, which is now 12 teams? Manny Navarro from The Athletic will tell us next.
You say this is a smash. I'm going to run out and smash my button while you talk about Ramondre Stevenson.
I don't think the Bengals defense is one that you should be fearful of. I think they're middle of the pack. They've lost the Bateses and some of those guys over the years that you used to fear. They got a lot of young kids in there who have some talent. But at the same time here, I do expect Ramondre to be a guy that is going to revert back to what he did a couple years ago.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
He had 4 grabs in the first half for just over 30 yards, was injured, came back in briefly, and then had to be carted off.
We were pessimistic on Puka Nakua's injury to the same right knee, of that being a nothing, just a bursa, and that's it, as per Sean McVay. We felt there could be a small PCL component.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Fair to say one of the more impressive starts to the college football season has been the University of Miami Hurricanes. They went to Gainesville, won very convincingly. Schedule is now in the soft part of the schedule, so it's probably a good time we bring in Manny Navarro from The Athletic, who has covered college, pro football, baseball, the entire Miami sports landscape for decades. Manny and I have known each other for a long time. Manny, thanks for coming on NewsWire again. It's great to see you. How are things?
Things are great, Craig. Happy to be back on and happy to be talking about a positive Miami Hurricane story. Felt like the last 20 years have been pretty bad.
Yeah. Every year there's optimism and then it falls flat. And honestly, it could happen again this year. We don't know. But at least the early returns have shown positive results. And they haven't really had some key coaching decisions or anything that have to happen because the offense has just been so explosive. Cam Ward's done such a good job. The Hurricanes are now ranked 10th in the country. As a Gator, it was sort of crushing to see how badly Florida went down in that game. And I guess, last week aside, Manny, I wonder what your perspective was on that one, because that sort of was the litmus test to begin the season. Do you think the Hurricanes are that good? Do you think the Gators are that bad? Is it somewhere in the middle? I mean, Florida plays Texas A&M this week. They're underdogs at home again in Gainesville. And I don't think that we really know either team thus far.
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me in terms of what's real for Miami is what Mario Cristobal has done on the offensive and defensive lines. You saw it last year when they were able to beat Clemson at home in that overtime game with a true freshman starting his very first game in college in Emory Williams. And so you saw that was real, right? Because Clemson, at the very least, maybe they're not the Clemson of old, but they're certainly still good enough to win the ACC. They were good enough to win 9 games last year. So Miami beat a solid Clemson team. That's something we wouldn't have seen in the previous 20 years, the way this program has sort of gone. So to me, that's the real part of it. But in terms of who is really real, is Miami that great or Florida that bad? I think it's probably closer to the middle. I think Florida with DJ Lagway is a better football program than it is with Graham Mertz. That's real. But I think we also have yet to see Miami face an opponent that can challenge Cam Ward, put pressure on them. And once they face a team that can do that, we'll really find out how good this Hurricanes team is.
Yeah, so we'll gloss over this game because this game is not going to happen here. In fact, it's a circled game on a lot of the boards here. Max bets are low as Miami's 36.5-point favorites. No money line available, total 55.5. So I'm not going to press you on this one. Let's assume Miami wins, and whether they cover or not, it's very close in the end here. 36 is a lot of points, but it certainly could happen based on what we saw last week. So here is the remaining schedule, which is going to start to get a little tougher next week. And when people look at South Florida, they say, what do you mean by tough? Miami has had issues against South Florida in the past, for people who don't remember. But then it gets real. Virginia Tech, at Cal, Louisville. And after that, it becomes more interesting because Florida State, I would assume by the time they get to October, will have their issues figured out. Then they take on Duke, Georgia Tech, who just lost to Syracuse, Wake Forest, and then at Syracuse to end the season. They're plus 115 to win the ACC, which is basically them as a favorite. And I would guess, as I'm looking at this, Manny, they're going to be favorites in every game they play, with the exception of at Louisville, provided that Louisville continues to play well. So that should tell people that Miami's got a great shot at this.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at, who's really the toughest foe on the schedule for Miami, I think the way Syracuse looked with Kyle McCord last Saturday at home against Georgia Tech gives you some pause because he looks like a legitimate quarterback. Obviously, they lost to Georgia Tech last year here at Hard Rock Stadium, have to go to Georgia Tech to play that game. I think Georgia Tech is a solid football team, maybe not the best in the ACC, but certainly a formidable foe. And then Louisville, who you mentioned, but we'll find out about Louisville in the coming weeks. They do have to play Georgia Tech and Notre Dame before September is over. So we should have a better gauge. But I think the Canes are certainly worthy of being favorites at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. And part of the reason that there's a lot of optimism is because, Mario Cristobal, when he first took over, we thought that probably was going to take a couple of years. The blip was really last year with some just critical mistakes and coaching decisions that we saw over and over again. But sometimes, Manny, as you know, in college and pro football, talent can really get you extremely far, maybe not all the way to the top. I think Hurricanes fans would take that right now. But as you said, the recruiting and adding some impact players to the line have people thinking that maybe this is one of those years that even if some small mistakes are made on the coaching end, the talent can overcome them.
Yeah, and look, you have one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I think Cam Ward has certainly proven to be one of the maybe top 5 transfers in the entire sport this year, just the way he's performed through the first 2 games. Having him instead of Tyler Van Dyke is a huge addition. And then you look at the defensive line. Tyler Barron is every bit as good as advertised. Everyone was saying he was one of the best transfers of the offseason. He's got 4 sacks through his first 2 games, 5.5 tackles for loss. And that, they're doing all this without Ruben Bain, who's arguably their best defensive player. He's been out since the very first series. So I think this team is for real. I think that anybody who wants to put some money on the Hurricanes to win the ACC, this is probably the year to do it. You've got the quarterback, you've got the defensive line, and you've got a really good offensive line. And sometimes that's all you need to win a conference like the ACC.
All right, so let's close it out on the college football playoff. 12 teams now, not 4. So because Miami is ranked 10th, Manny, they're minus 150 to qualify for the 12-team playoff. I'm going to assume that Miami's going to lose a game between now and the end of the season. I don't know if it's going to be 2. Would you agree that a 1-loss Miami team is in the playoff and a 2-loss Miami team is not? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it just depends on when that loss happens, because let's say they go 10-2 and then win the ACC championship, then they're automatically in. So it just kind of depends on who they play. in that ACC championship. If they play a one-loss Clemson team and lose to Clemson in the ACC championship, then maybe, the committee still looks at Miami and says they deserve a spot as well. It's very iffy right now, really. It just depends on how the Big 12 looks, how Notre Dame finishes its season. I think all of those will play factors come, late November, early December.
Well, Manny, it is always great to see you. I don't see you enough in person anymore, but it's great to catch up with you here virtually. Thanks again for coming on NewsWire.
Anytime. Thanks for having me, Craig.
All right, Manny Navarro of The Athletic, covering college football in the state of Florida, Hurricanes, Gators, Florida State. Miami is the team right now. I don't know, maybe UCF is the second best. Oh, gosh, did I really say that? UCF, second best team in Florida? We'll wrap it up next.
You say this is a smash. I'm going to run out and smash my button while you talk about Ramondre Stevenson.
I don't think the Bengals defense is one that you should be fearful of. I think they're middle of the pack. They've lost the Bateses and some of those guys over the years that you used to fear. They got a lot of young kids in there who have some talent. But at the same time here, I do expect Ramondre to be a guy that is going to revert back to what he did a couple years ago.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
He had 4 grabs in the first half for just over 30 yards, was injured, came back in briefly, and then had to be carted off.
We were pessimistic on Puka Nakua's injury to the same right knee, of that being a nothing, just a bursa, and that's it, as per Sean McVay. We felt there could be a small PCL component.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Everyone had him rookie of the year, offensive player of the year. Bears are going to the Super Bowl. Eberflus coach of the year. He was terrible.
If he's going to be a success, he's got to play within structure as much as possible. I get it. If the pocket breaks down, throw off the platform. That's fine. But within structure, when the play is there to be made, you need to make it, and he didn't do that.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
147 yards against the Jets and a touchdown? Man, the numbers are incredible.
It's the Shanahan connection, and that's just what it feels like. And, Jordan Mason came into that game with a career 5.6 yards per carry. He's always been a very tough runner. He's always been good when called upon in small doses. You mentioned the yardage, which was impressive, but 28 carries. That's what I'm looking at.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. As we get ready to wrap up the show, we'll touch on some baseball, some football, and some NBA betting that we're covering here. Time now for some last licks. All right, well, the Miami Marlins are about to make history, folks, and it's not really a record that you want to be known for, but I guess it shows that you have the ability to use a lot of players over the course of the season. You may have seen me send this out on social media yesterday. So the Marlins have used a total of 69 players this Major League Baseball season. That feat has only been done twice by the Seattle Mariners and the Chicago Cubs. Cubs last did it in 2021. But they did it right at the end of the season, on the last day of the season. Well, we still have a couple of weeks to go. And the Miami Marlins have called up 2 new players. And if they use either of them today, which is certainly possible, then they will break the all-time record for most players used on a 26, or in this case, 28-man roster over the course of a Major League Baseball season. I mean, that is insane. Now, Miami has had so many injuries to the pitching staff. They made so many trades. I guess it's not surprising that they would use 50 or 60, but I think they're going to shatter this. I think before the end of the season, they're going to end up using like 73, 74 players. because if they go above 69 today to 70, they've called up 2 players already that have not made their debut this season. So this is going to happen. It's not if, but when. And by the way, they could shatter this around the time that Shohei Ohtani visits South Florida. Ohtani tonight has a chance to get closer to 50-50, by the way. All right, Notre Dame has not had a good start to their season. I think that's fair to say. They lost to Northern Illinois. And before Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois last week, their quarterback, Riley Leonard, signed an NIL deal with Dick's Sporting Goods. And he shared this opportunity with his linemen. Leonard, who was in the top 25 of On3's NIL 100 with an evaluation of $1.1 million, brought his lineman to an appearance in Indiana, and that allowed him to spread the NIL fees and gift cards to the men that protect him every week. So this is super cool. The only problem with this is that Riley Leonard did not play particularly well, and I wonder if Dick's Sporting Goods is looking at this $1.1 million and saying, oof, not so great. Now, Notre Dame still can make up a lot of ground in the college football playoff, and they have a tough schedule, so all they have to do is basically win the rest of their games the rest of the season, but they looked awful on offense last week. So, unfortunately, this $1.1 million for Riley Leonard, good job by him, by the way. Excellent job spreading the wealth, but couldn't spread it around, I guess, to his wide receivers. Is that fair to say? As if you're going to lose as Notre Dame to Northern Illinois as a big favorite, you're not going to get a lot of love from me. All right, finally, Josh Hart of the New York Knicks. Knicks have made the show in the middle of September. How did that happen? Well, Josh Hart says last night on social media, I hate parlays. I'm officially done betting on football for the next 48 hours. Very funny. Good job by Josh Hart. Good thing that the NBA players can bet on the NFL and college football as well. It seems like he had a bad night last night. Listen, you're not going to win betting on these parlays. Like, how many times do we have a lot of very smart people who give out opinions and picks and stuff like that here on the show. How many times do you hear the word parlay on our show? Yet, every time you go on to any of these sports betting apps, FanDuel, DraftKings, the first thing you see, and I can't even bet on those. I have the Hard Rock app because I'm in Florida, is the first thing you see are these same game parlays. I mean, folks, you're not going to be winning these things. Now, Josh Hart doesn't matter. He's millions and millions of dollars. But for the average person here, find your favorite pick of the week, bet it, and be done. Can't do that? Is it too difficult to do? I don't get it. All right. That'll do it for our week of shows. And don't forget, Fantasy Sports Today, tomorrow morning. Boy, we got a lot to talk about, me and George Kurtz, so make sure you stay tuned for that, 7 a.m. tomorrow. But coming up next, we've got a lot of fun programming here today. Remember, Scott Farrell is in Las Vegas, so make sure you check out his show a little bit later. And also, we got Bare Knuckle coming up at noon Eastern, so stay tuned to that. Galazzo today at 1. Smiley Kaufman, 1:30 to 2, talking some golf. WNBA today at 2, and then the daily racing weekend preview is 2:30 to 3. Scotty is on immediately after that from Las Vegas. The big Canelo Alvarez fight coming up later. Also, thanks to Jim Gazzale from Legal Sports Report, Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News, Manny Navarro from The Athletic, our associate director Luke, and our producer Frank. I'm Craig Mish. I hope you have a great weekend. We'll be back here on Monday with our next edition of NewsWire. Our SportsGrid insider Adam Kaplan will go around the league and we'll preview Monday Night Football as well. So with that, I hope you have a great weekend here on SportsGrid. See you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. for Fantasy Sports Today, or Monday morning for our next edition of NewsWire. See you then.